Hello and welcome to the Screen Chronicles. I'm Colby, and with me as always is Steve. And today we are joined by one of the core brethren of the Uhtred bro group. You will know him as Sihtric from The Last Kingdom. Arnas Fedaravičius, welcome to the Screen Chronicles.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Thank you for having me very much. And Colby.
Got it.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited. I've never, apart from that one random podcast on set, I've never done one. I listened to tons of them, so it's just it's good to be part of.
Cool. Well, we enjoyed your podcast for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It was some fun stuff. What are some podcasts that you like to listen to?
I like comedy a lot, so I love listening to Bill Burr rambling a lot.
We love
that every week. I also love Bat Friends very much with Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee.
Okay.
And on this side of the river, I really enjoy this Irish guy called The Blind Boy. So I like a kind of comedy and historical podcasts. I love history very much. So that's
okay. So it's kind of perfect that you landed in Last Kingdom. Is that a time period that you really like when you talk about love and history?
I think I wasn't so much into history when I was in school, but I think around the time that I joined Last Kingdom, there were more. There was, because we needed to research the time a little bit, and out of that, I've sort of formed this new love for history. I spend most of the time studying like 20th century history.
Okay.
Very much. It's a very different time in our history in terms of what's been, what we've been exposed to.
Totally.
But that era is something that I like reading about and listening about.
Very interesting. So
So
where are you right now?
I'm currently in London, the UK. Is this okay if I keep moving around a little bit?
Whatever you want. Yeah.
I'm currently in London. I'm going to be here for a little bit longer, and then we'll hopefully go to Budapest soon.
Yeah. Congrats on the approval of season 5. We are pumped for that, and congrats on the success of season 4 because you guys really killed it again. You guys killed it every time so far, but this time it seemed like you guys got some recognition, being number 1 on IMDb and being in the top 10 on Netflix for a while. So it's pretty cool.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's very, because when you do a job, you never know what's it going to be like. And I personally try to let go of it. You just do your job and then it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And it's just it's really nice to have this recognition and people enjoying the show so much. It just feels good. It feels really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we really feel that it's not really huge where we are yet. We're trying to spread the word as much as we can. And it is growing pretty big. But we kind of like that we found it when it wasn't massive. You know what I mean? Right, Steve?
Yeah. I was finding those bands and stuff that no one else really loves, but they're great still. That's when we got into it. Was right after season 3.
What kind of bands? What kind of bands are not very known but are very good?
Well, I listen to it's kind of more of a mainstream alternative, I guess, but Florence and the Machine. I think a lot of people might have heard some of her music. I like her. And then Matchbox 20, I love them, but they're not really mainstream anymore. I wouldn't say.
Yeah,
got it.
All of my bands are not really well known, and I think they're pretty good. No, but I like a band called Ghost, who I kind of found when they were kind of nobody. I don't know.
Oh my God, Ghost! Wait, what is it like?
They're Swedish.
Do they sing in it, or is it just music?
They sing in it.
Okay, no, I thought it was.
Is there different? Yeah, there's a lot of Ghosts out there. The name.
Yes.
But this one, I found them when they were nobody. I've seen them 8 times now, and I think before the 3rd show I saw them, they won a Grammy, and then they blew up, and now they were playing arenas, and it was kind of cool to see them grow. But I guess they're big now. So 12 Foot Ninja's one from Australia that's kind of not known well, and they're pretty awesome. So give them a little shout out.
What is that? Is that like Rocky? Is that rock type of thing? I'm sorry, because once in the machine, it's indie-ish, but it's also has a classic touch to it. But what's this?
12 Foot Ninja is it's a mix of heavy metal, reggae, jazz fusion.
Wow.
Put it all in a blender, mix it together, and that's what you got. So it's weird to go to their shows because there'll be like a mosh or just going nuts, and then all of a sudden they'll cut to jazz fusion, and you just kind of vibe with it, and it's a kind of weird feeling.
That sounds interesting.
It is interesting. They were super funny too. They got like funny music videos and stuff. Yeah. What do you listen to? What kind of stuff?
Lately I've been very, very much into country music.
Really?
Like who?
My Spotify made my most listened to tracks list of last year, and Blaze Foley was number one.
Okay.
So I love Blaze Foley very, very much. I've been listening to him and over again. Then this guy called Johnny Paycheck. So I'm like in that like 70s, late 60s, 70s.
Okay, yeah.
So that kind of old-fashioned country compared to like modern radio country.
Yeah, so like even like gunslinger type of stuff. Like what's his name? Oh my God, I forgot this. This is one of the most beautiful singers. Oh, I'll have to look it up. I'll have to look it up because it's very important. The gun specifically. What I have to
go for it.
Marty Robbins? That's the one.
Cool.
Marty Robbins. If you ever heard of him,
I have.
So I'm into that lately, but I also love a lot of minimal techno. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I think I saw a post. You had like a board. I think it was your birthday post, and you had a donut in your mouth. It looked like you were mixing something. Do you kind of create your own music?
Well, I was in LA before lockdown started, and one of the places that I was Airbnb-ing at, the owners of the house, the owner is a producer, and at some point he's like, we're talking about music. He's like, "Do you want to learn mixing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of do." So he started teaching me like house music mixing and all kinds of electronic music. So I decided I have a lot of free time as this is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just bought this little deck. It's like it's just for beginners, and every now and again, it's a great way to bring your full attention to something.
Totally.
And I love that. I love everything that requires your full attention. Mm-hmm. So because I'm very hyper. So if there's no way out of this, like if when you're acting, when you're working out, and now doing this, it's only this. You can't focus on anything else, and I really appreciate. Because it invites me to focus. Otherwise, I'd be all over the place. So
I love the process of creating music and just a creative process, really, with anything. That's a good way of putting it. Just kind of drawing your focus. And
I like doing anything that makes sure that I'm not just mindlessly going on my phone or something.
Yeah, I guess you get into this sort of a state of flow, and that flow could be. I think that's a good way to gauge if something that you're doing is something that you should be doing. If you get into the state of flow and everything around you disappears, then like you might try and do this again.
Yeah, you're in the right place. That's super cool.
I like looking for flow.
What are some other things you find flow in?
Well, definitely working out. Like I really appreciate like boxing and combat sports. I like the hierarchy of like having a teacher and giving my full respect to the teacher. So I appreciate like there's a sense of purpose that you get when you work out, and if somebody else is supervising you do that, you're like you have to give yourself fully to the person and just follow the orders, let's say. Mm-hmm. And that, in a way, that takes you out of the flow, because it takes you into the flow because you're in control of yourself, but you're also, there's this governing agent that tells you do this, do that, and following him kind of gets me that. I like writing. I haven't yet wrote like anything novel or creative, but every day I sit down and write for like 30 minutes in the morning.
Oh, cool.
And that completely, there's nothing else around you and everything like that. Cooking as well. Lately cooking. I've been into.
What do you make?
Lately I've been enjoying Asian kitchen because I've been with like specifically Thai and Malay food. Because I was with a bunch of people and then invite someone over and they're like vegetarian. And you're like, all right, what do I do with protein? So then you look up stuff and then you come up with stuff, and I don't know. It's creative. Anything that's creative brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah,
very cool.
Can you tell us then how you got into acting? Then how that filled that creative side of you.
Well, I spent a lot of time in the movies when I was very little. my was very lucky that my dad took me to see. I think I actually might have started off with Star Wars movies, if I'm not mistaken, or it was one of the movies with Leslie Nielsen. What was, you remember those like crazy comedies like Airplane or whatever?
Yeah, I love those. The airplane movies.
I can't remember which one it was, but I remember he took me there, and it sort of switched something in me because I've never been to a cinema before, and I think I was like 4 or 5, and the sense of being in that room sort of over time formed into an addiction, and as like, well, an addiction, just like a passion. So I'd skip school a lot. I'd like, if I hate, like, I didn't like going to school very much. I think I was okay, but I didn't ever put too much effort in, I guess. And sometimes when I didn't like the classes, I'd skip school and go to movies instead, and then come back to the school or to the math tutor that my parents put me in, so that it could pick me up as if I did the actual studying thing. Okay. And during that time, I think I was like around 13, 14. That's when I started going to movies like twice or 3 times a week.
Wow.
And then I started going alone. There was this accident, like my friends invited me to watch, there's this movie by Guy Ritchie called Revolver, which is very underrated in my opinion.
Haven't seen it.
And they invited me to see that movie, and I happened to arrive at a different location that everyone else. And I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm here. I'll still watch it. And that was the first time I went alone. I think I was 14. And that just opened up a new gate for me. And I started going there alone more often than with someone else.
Yeah.
And during that, it became more of a, it wasn't just like a pastime activity, but it was some sort of an engagement, a communication with the screen, if I may say. And during that time, I kept feeling this, like, I can't describe what it is, but it's like a force field. After certain movies, I'd walk out and you couldn't talk for a couple of hours or something like that. And I really got infatuated by that feeling. And as I kept watching movies, I just started feeling like that's something that I would one day like for other people to feel. And if there was a way for me to be part of that. So I think I was, at that time, I made a decision that I want to be with movies. I wasn't sure there in what capacity, because one of my late grandfathers, was a sound director. So I was like, do I want to be a sound director? Do I want to direct, or do I want to act? So yeah, around then I knew then that that's what I want to be in. I didn't know in which specific capacity, but I knew that movies is something that I have to do.
Very cool.
That's a long answer.
No, it's a good answer. How'd you get into The Last Kingdom then from there?
So I first started studying philosophy because my parents didn't allow me to study acting, but I did a movie in Lithuania, like an Italian project. It was my first shot at movies. And at the time of Last Kingdom, I just moved back to London from Russia because I spent 2.5 years living in Moscow.
Wow.
Because I fell in love. And that was, that ended. I came back to London. And at the time, I was working as a flyer guy, street promotions. You know, you hand out flyers for all kinds of whatever things. And I just got a self-tape for it, and I did it, and I completely forgot about it, and I kept on doing the flyering job.
Okay.
And one day, I got a call back. I was like in the middle of my shift, like 6:30 in the morning, like promoting a gym or something. Like it was a time of my life as well. And I got a call back, and I completely forgot about it. And my parents always wanted me to study, and I studied a bit of philosophy, a bit of acting in Lithuania, but I kept on dropping out of everything. So I promised my mom that I'm going to apply for RADA, which I did twice, which is Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is one of the biggest acting schools in England. And the call back was on the same day that the audition for RADA was.
Okay.
So I told my mom that I still went, but I didn't. And I went to that call back, and a couple weeks later, I got a call from my agent, like, you're there. And then I called my mom and I told that I just got the letter from RADA. I didn't get into RADA, but I got this other gig going, and she was quite happy. She wasn't as happy that I still didn't study, but I got into Last Kingdom. So
yeah. So were you already a fan of the show because you joined in season 2? Had you seen season 1?
Before doing the audition, like I never watched it. It was always in my radar, but I never just chose to watch it because at that time I wasn't into period dramas.
Okay.
I think it was just before Last Kingdom that I started watching period dramas in general, and I started liking them. So I didn't watch it before, but then once I got confirmed, I remember watching it, and it's such a stupid thing to say probably, but I don't know. But when the last episode, when Alex Uhtred jumped over the
shield wall.
Do you remember that?
Hell yeah.
Scared the guy and jumped over the shield wall. I remember I cried. I started crying just like because it's like I'm fucking part of this thing. And it's just it was so beautiful. And I binged the season in like 2 days.
Yeah.
And it built up to that moment. And when he made that jump, I realized how good of a show this is. Not because of that jump specifically, but it all played into that one moment for me.
It built up to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was instantly a fan.
That's awesome. It's such a well-crafted thing. And I know you mentioned about leaving the movie theater and having that sort of feeling, that sort of like you can't get out of your head and you're in this zone. Well, that's kind of Steve and I watched The Last Kingdom together. That's kind of how we were when we watched it. We had each other, though, to talk about it.
Right.
But we would discuss the show after a season or an episode or epic episode for like hours after the show. We'd just be talking about it.
How'd you guys find it? How'd you guys find it in the first place? Who was the one to find the show?
We both just finished up some other shows. I think we finished up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So we were roommates in grad school.
Yeah.
Too.
Right.
And we were kind of binging shows. Last Kingdom kept coming across our radar, and in all honesty, the season 1 trailer never really like pulled us in.
Right.
So we kind of always like, well, I don't know if we'd really like this, and we kind of keep going, and we just kind of ran out of other stuff to watch.
Yeah, I think we
were so wrong.
Bodyguard.
We were so wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because after like 1 or 2 episodes, it became our favorite show. Like. We were so in.
That's really awesome. That's nice. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Good.
It was awesome. So yeah, I think you do kind of help accomplish that in the show. There's so many people that craft this awesome show, but it definitely leaves people thinking about it long after you watch it, for sure.
Yeah,
which is a cool thing.
I'm really happy to hear that because, like as I mentioned, that's something that I'd really like to be part of, and I always wanted to be part of something that. In some way would leave a feeling, whatever, if it's anger, love, or hate or whatever, but if it just makes you feel something and for a bit of a longer time than just you engaging with the show, then I think we might be on the right track.
Oh yeah.
I think Last Kingdom makes you feel all those things, angry, and you're always angry with the antagonist. You're always happy when there's a great, like a camaraderie moment between, his Uhtred's bro group is what we call it.
We love that.
And then the big action. You're jumping over a shield wall. You're, sacking Dunholm. Those great moments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are so fun.
Speaking of like emotional moments like that, one that we kind of wanted to ask you about that we see after the Battle of Dunholm, like Steve just brought up, is when Ragnar has just beat your father, Sihtric's father, in a fight, Kjartan in the fight, and he kills him, where you at first, you look excited about it. You look like you're pumped. And then when he kind of goes brutal,
you start wincing.
You start wincing. So could you talk a little bit about maybe what was going through Sihtric's head a little bit?
I really enjoyed, I guess, getting to that scene because the director, John East, who directed that particular block, he came up to me, I think a week before that shot even took place, and we started talking about the psychology of a father-son relationship, and the type of father-son relationship it is, and then how do you feel about it. And I think we only had one take for that. So I didn't feel like we managed to. I wanted to go, I guess, explore more, but I'm happy that it, I guess, landed that way.
Yeah.
I guess it's a sort of understanding that you despise someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
You really hate someone for being so terrible towards you, or not being there for you, and you have this resentment. And even before the fight, you know, you're angry because he didn't even look at you. You didn't even know that you're there, right? But as the killing goes on, I don't know if that's what went through my head. I don't remember. But if I look at it, I would say that at some point you do realize that, so well, now what? Now it's dead. That's the only blood you ever had. I guess that's something that might have affected him or me in that moment, is that the fact that that's the last blood relative he ever had. And I think blood plays a big part in humans, and then maybe in that time it's even different. So it's even more heightened because of, you know, who are you? Who do you represent? Your value in society comes from where you come from your blood.
Absolutely.
And when you cut that cord, what are you left with? You know. And even though, so I guess maybe, I don't know if it's exactly that, but I think I felt sadness a little bit, because you're like, yes, kill, be dead. And then, you know, he's just gone, and that's it. Now I'm definitely alone. Yeah. You know, wow. I think.
He mentioned, Sihtric mentioned his mother was a slave woman. Is she still alive? Is she dead, I guess, then from... Yeah.
He never met her.
Oh.
He never met, she well, the way I see it, I can't remember what's it like in the books. It's been told that she died while giving birth to Sihtric. But I also, you know, if you look at Kjartan, you could question, like, did she die at giving birth, or did you just kill her? And, you know, it's not written, it's not said, but I like to think about it. I like to think about it because I don't know, you know, and that gives some extra thoughts for me when I'm, I guess, working on it, to just be like, oh, I know this, but how much of it do I really know? Why isn't she here? You know?
Interesting.
So she basically, supposedly she died while giving birth to Sihtric, and that's when I never saw her.
Interesting. Are there any other things that you think about as far as Sihtric's background? Because we kind of meet him, you know, in season 2, and he's just kind of with I forget that big Dane's name.
But
that you go and kind of in Kjartan's men.
Yeah.
And all we see, I think there's a quick shot of like you kind of going up for food, and I think he shoves you back.
Yeah.
It doesn't focus on it.
But you guys pick up on things. Yeah.
But I guess maybe that was supposed to be symbolism for Sihtric not being treated well, probably most of his life, for being a bastard. How do you see that? How do you see Sihtric's past?
I think that in certain cultures, and historically, even more, like less so now, but back then, being a bastard is like it seems like a very low life form for other people. Right. So I think that they're treated differently. Even let's think about Osferth, who's also a bastard, right? And he never gets any recognition.
Yeah. Alfred.
So So I like to think about that. I like to think. I mean, I like to, but I wonder if he's been treated like that all of his life. Everywhere he goes, he's just someone carrying out somebody's mission, and he might die or might not. Nobody gives a shit too much. So there's this quality of not being important all of your life. So I like to think about that, and I think becoming part of Team Uhtred sort of helps him form a new purpose and identity, perhaps.
Interesting.
If I can think in those terms, if he can think in those terms, I don't think that he does perhaps think in those terms, but there's definitely a feeling there, you know. True. I think definitely must feel that now he's a bit different. There's a bit more value, but even in his day-to-day operations with Uhtred, I think there's still that, you know, like I'm a servant, and I wonder if he'll ever lose that or grow out of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I like to think that because of not having a name, coming from a terrible background, I like to think that one of his purposes might be, to one day create his name and be someone, now that the cord is cut, there's no one behind him.
That is very interesting. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, these are
what's that?
Good questions. Thank you, man. Very, very nice questions.
Where do you see Sihtric's role in Team Uhtred? Where do you see? Because we see Finan is more of the overt sort of comrade, where he's the one giving the hug to Uhtred. He's always the one giving the emotional talk or whatever it is. But Sihtric's always there as well, and he's always there when Uhtred needs him. Kobe and I love the scene where he sends Sihtric on a fake feud mission to go spy on Canute and Bloodhair in season 3. What do you see like Sihtric? What's his role in the group?
I think, like, initially, because of his nature of him being a Dane, there was, definitely useful to use him as a spy, to send him out on missions and to gain information. But as time goes by, Team Uhtred becomes more popular, I guess, and Danes find out about what's inside the team, so it's less likely to be that. But I like the dynamic of the group that we have. We're all different characters, but we're all this one person in it, essentially, because Uhtred is split. He's neither Dane nor Saxon, right? And here we have a bunch who's one is a Saxon, someone's an Irish crazy man, and there's one who's a Dane. Yeah. So I feel like perhaps Sihtric's role is to somehow also, once every now and again, remind the nature of our type of battling. We're like, it's glory to death. We're going out like, let's just ram the gate. Let's go in and go for it, because it's on the other side. We'll celebrate. We'll die and we'll celebrate together that we tried killing this. There's a lot less. There's less of a safety trigger in Sihtric, I think, when it comes to decision making together as a unit. So I like that, and I also think that there's, when it comes to the relationship between Uhtred and him, it's just like we both know, because we're both Danes. Let's say we both carry the Thor's hammer, so we're more into that faith system, let's say. Right. So it's like a little thing that you might have together, because we both, believe similar things. I think. So I think it's that. And it's also, I think Uhtred, as for Sihtric, has become this father figure.
Yeah.
As a friend, because Sihtric is allowed to have like doubt his beliefs sometimes, because sometimes Uhtred is rash, like with his decisions. So you can still like, come on, but there's this sense of loyalty that I think might, even with the death of his father, has passed on. Like, even with the first conversation that he has with Uhtred, like, you're a true lord and I want to follow someone who's a true, like, basically what he's saying sounds to me is like, hey, sucks, my life sucks there, could you teach me and guide me?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's an indirect way of taking him on as a role model.
Yeah. Very
cool.
Yeah, he even asked for Uhtred's approval of his wife in season 3.
There we go.
Yep.
And
there we go.
I think he even wanted to name his child after Uhtred.
I love that.
And that's that. Now that you say it, I didn't think about it that way, but now that you say it, it's like, technically that's indirect ways of saying, hey, do you want to be my dad?
Yeah. Asking permission, wanting to name it after him. Yeah. It's very cool. Also, very funny.
I'm going to make notes out of this. Use this.
So I wanted you just mentioned the sequence where you kind of get in a fake fight, which we don't know is fake, in season 3 with Uhtred, and talk about being mad as a viewer. It's like so frustrating to see this, supposedly the bro group sort of breaking up a little bit. And, and we're all like,
the Beatles were going.
Relax. But I gotta ask, what do you imagine the conversation with Uhtred was like planning that out? Was it like, oh my God, we're gonna get Finan and Osford so good, high-fiving each other?
It must have. I wonder. I actually do think about that. What that conversation could have been, but I wonder how subtle must have it been for it to land that. You know, I mean, for it to land in general, because let's assuming that they're not, you know, actors. Sihtric is not but spying in a way is a role like that. So I wonder if Uhtred maybe tried to piss him off initially. Maybe he gave him a mission, but also said him some terrible things like your wife this, like you're gonna do that. So I wonder, because I think that Uhtred is very, you know, he's very intelligent in delivering his idea. So I wonder if he could have not like fed that anger a little bit. And obviously Sihtric was sitting and drinking, so that might have helped. Maybe perhaps he even said something that, oh, we're going to do it this way. And then when Uhtred arrived, he started saying completely different things, which then
puts a genuine reaction.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's hard to say, because at that point of shooting, I wasn't sure as well. It was like,
really?
Am I going to get killed off? What's going on here? He's like, no, this is spying. But because we didn't yet see the further scripts.
Really?
I wasn't sure. I mean, the writers knew it, but I wasn't sure. So
because he believed in the curse from Skade too. He genuinely,
definitely,
he attributed all their hard times to that.
That's another thing I think of Sihtric, is that there's this ongoing superstition, you know, like belief in the deities that he believes in. It's like it's a pretty strong faith. So yeah, the Skade thing was definitely felt like a curse to him from the beginning. I think from the beginning when he came in, it's like no. And I like the dynamic of the group, that we bring different superstitions to it.
Totally.
You know, because and Uhtred is in between two worlds. He believes in his gods, but he still like diplomatically has to assume that there's that god too.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
He's been baptized twice, so
there we have it.
It's interesting. So it's interesting what you mentioned about the writers. You didn't know necessarily at the time that you were kind of fake fighting. Is that?
No, I knew. I had a like. I didn't know how it was going to play out.
Oh, okay.
So I think they already had the drafts for it, but I just didn't know, and I didn't know who to ask, and I was afraid to ask, perhaps.
Okay.
So in my head, I wasn't really sure.
I wonder, too, if they preferred it that way, because similar in the way that Uhtred maybe kind of got at your emotions, Sihtric's emotions in the scene to sell it to Dagfinn in the Table of Danes so that they would believe him when he escaped and joined, you know. Makes you wonder if they kind of were thinking that, too. To sell it to us as the audience, that this is real.
Yeah,
interesting.
I think you're right. There's a lot of layers in believing, and who believes, and how do we perceive the believing. So I wouldn't know. Maybe they did.
Maybe, I don't know, but it's interesting though that you weren't sure about it.
I wasn't. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I wasn't. Yeah.
We were just so frustrated with Uhtred at the time, though. And then later on too, when he started trusting Skade, we were like, what the heck is Uhtred doing this season, man?
He made us doubt him so much that season.
But then he'd come around. I mean, when you come back to him and he just, you know, he raises his arms up and like for you to like kill him or something, and everyone else in the group, it won our best bro moment for that episode there. When Sihtric comes back, and it was just great.
That was different, because it's fun in a different way, because now like I know Sihtric knows what's up, so then to like now just have like a duo moment with Uhtred, because at this point we both know already that this is just a game. But to have that sense, like to try and raise the stakes, that like what It was just really fun. The bro moments really are precious, and I really appreciate all of them because we are bros.
Yes.
Hopefully still good actors, but in real life we're just bros.
Well, that's what Steve and I, we really connected with the show for so many reasons, but for that level, Steve and I being bros, and we always like to think, if we were in that world, we'd like to think we're in the bro group. We don't know for sure, but we'd like to think we're in the Uhtred gang.
Well, that's nice. That's nice too. I really appreciate if it translates to the screen and people can really feel
totally
the pain between, and I think I personally I'm a fan of season 4, and I appreciate the vulnerability in Team Uhtred. That it's hard. I feel like it's hard being Uhtred, and it's hard being everyone in there, and you have so much loss and so much death going on, and everything's just slipping. So to be able to, because I think usually shows like similar to that are, the guy's superhero and he wins everything, whereas here you come in, he loses something and he's just losing his shit. He doesn't know if he can go on. And I really, really appreciate that all the actors invite that vulnerability and deconstructing the male image of like, I'm always in control. Nope, never.
We actually like that. We like the healthy male bonds that they all form, or
totally.
they definitely are tough sons of bitches for sure. They're going to battle, they're going to shield walls, but then when something actually happens, they're not just tough, Clint Eastwood through it. They express it, they work through it together. They might have to really try hard to get over that lump because people are resistant to opening up, I think that's what makes it a really good emotional side. That's what, when I try to describe it to other people, I'm like, don't just focus on the swords and stuff. That stuff's awesome for sure. You have to appreciate that as well.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I appreciate that it lands like that. Because I think an interesting point that you just touched on is that powering through that lump, as you said, only works when they're exposed to other characters. Like within the group, the bond has been raised. Like they're so bonded by now that you can let go at times. To be, vulnerable, to not show like my sword is like I can do anything. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
And we had Sarah O'Gorman on the podcast too, and that's something we talked a lot about, was kind of that vulnerability side, and especially the men being vulnerable is it's really super.
Yeah, Sarah's
unique,
and I really appreciate working with her. She really did it. She really had a nice touch to the show. I appreciate it very much.
They were definitely our like 2 favorite episodes from season 4. I think were 3 and 4.
Yeah.
You got the crazy emotions in episode 3, along with the beginning has some pretty awesome action sequences. And then obviously maybe like one of the coolest battles on The Last Kingdom. There's just so many, but this kind of seemed like it stepped up a level, at least production wise. Right.
Yeah. And she came in on the hardest week. So like she started off with the battle in Bebember.
Yeah.
So that the one at the end of the season, episode 2. So she's first days we were battling, and she was just in there, and the way that it turned into this vulnerable, emotional story, and then again landed with that massive battle. Really enjoyed her input.
And probably not an easy thing to execute like that either. I mean, that's a tall order, and she did it well. She did it really well.
Really well.
Oh my goodness. So what kind of experience, obviously on the show, you look like a very proficient fighter. Did you have any fighting experience before coming onto the show?
Not sword fighting.
No.
I haven't had much sword fighting. I did, I'm an enthusiast in boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai every now and again. But, so that's the only type of fighting I had before, like, sparring here and there. But when we started doing this, the sword fighting became more of a thing. And sometimes in between season, Mark's very resourceful when setting up stuff. So he sometimes invite like sword fighting teachers somewhere in London. We meet in the park and just do some drills. Or even on the show, sometimes we would take there's always swords at home. Everybody has like swords in Budapest in case you need to, in case you want to work on something, or Mark would be like, guys, what about this choreography? Well, how about we go to the gym and practice some movements and maybe add something. So we research a little bit, try to make, it's nice trying to shape, because the fighting itself, and that's what Sarah, I think, said, fighting itself, it's not interesting if it doesn't tell a story on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
So what we appreciate is trying to develop specific ways of fighting for every character. Because yes, they have specific weaponry, but it's interesting to like, can you add a little bit of a flying knee there? What if you do a little throw there? What if you stab that guy 10 times more? So just little things that would tell the story of the character while also showing him fighting.
Interesting.
Yeah. From my point of view, and I guess both of ours too, Colby brought this up when we talked about it, was Sihtric felt really, I guess, like explosive in comparison to everyone else this season as far as his fighting style. Especially like when he got cut down from the tree and just really quick. Is that how you distinguish him from the other ones, or?
Well, I like to think that inside him, because of his Scandinavian mythology beliefs and belief in those deities, I like to think that it adds like this trigger inside him that once you like click it, it's just rage, full on, and it's less protective because you're like, every time you go to battle, like, I'm gonna die, I'm here to die. It's approaching every fight with
that Dane mentality.
Yes, the Dane mentality, and therefore it becomes. I'm very happy that it came across as that on screen. There's just this layer of rage because he's sort of always just waiting for the fight in a way, because that's his like destiny, right? Because he doesn't get to see his family a lot, so there's about a bit of rage for that as well. But it's like, come on, when are we fighting? When are we? Can we just get into battle? Can we just get in? So whenever you present him the opportunity, there's nothing else, and there's joy. That's what we try to explore with Mark as well. Is when you see those like little whatever sword taps or whatever that we do together, is because we're made for this. We're made to fight. And every opportunity that you get to fight is a celebration. So even though it's death, it's also a celebration of our type of life, their type of life, let's say.
That's so cool. I also wouldn't mess with Sihtric with just a rope, because you've had a couple of cool scenes where you, the first time, it's not the first time we meet you, but your first really big scene is when you have to convince Uhtred to let you join, and you threaten Halig with, I think you said you had to go take a shit or something and go out in the woods, right? And then you like wrap him up and you, I don't know if that was him you tripped up. And then again in season 4, you get cut down and all you have is the rope, and you just do like a quick dodge. You like clothesline the guy, which we had our little Arsling Award show that for fun that Steve and I did, and we nominated that. I think it was nominated as one of the cool battle moments. Yeah, was that little sleek like dodge. With the rope.
Oh, nice. I never thought about it that way, that it's a theme. Yeah. That was like the first scene, the one with Halig, was one of the most educational battle scenes for me, fight scene, because we were shooting with Sean Savage, who's a great camera operator.
He's the one from Game of Thrones, I think.
Yes. So he does all that, and we'd sort of practice it, but he'd be really close. And he said, don't worry about it, just go for it. And so you're slashing your sword, and he's just there, and he just like ducks, and you're like, and you're watching him do that. And in the middle of the shot, like, what the fuck? Does he know? So it was very educational in terms of how much speed do you have to add to the fight for it to look real. And Yeah, those rope, like we have a great stunt team, so I really appreciate that they added the rope thing in season 4. I didn't even consider that those two are connected, but now that you say it,
just wouldn't mess with him with rope though. I mean,
it's just I wouldn't mess with him if he's got a rope. If he's like walking around town with a rope, I'm not charging him.
I hope we can introduce. I don't know if they had any lassoing going on back then, but it'd be interesting too.
Season 5.
That's way. And I think that's way better than the Pirates of the Caribbean rope scene. And do you remember what I'm talking? In the first one where like Jack Sparrow and Orlando Bloom have the rope and they run, but the British guys are just running in between them.
Yes.
It's just like
Orlando Bloom shows up as one of the musketeers at the end. And
yeah.
What's one of your favorite battles? What are your favorite battles or fight scenes that you've done from the show?
I really do. Maybe because it was the first real one, and it was a big scene to come into this TV show, was the presentation of like the can you be my lord scene, the one with Halleck when they cut them off, because it was the first like solo fight, so I had to work on it quite specifically, and it was just including tricks that I've never thought before that I would be doing. The cutting off the guy with the pulling his legs with the rope, taking the sword out of him. It felt very functional, Yeah.
So
using your environment, using other people's weapons. I feel like that raises the stakes because you're more likely to die if anything goes wrong. Yeah. So I like those high stake moments. There are a couple of, I don't know if they made the cut this season, perhaps. I don't remember, but there were a couple of, in episode 4, the big battle scene there are a couple of like jiu-jitsu throws and stuff.
You take a guy down, I think it's in that battle, and then you stab him. Yeah. That's cool you mentioned that. It was real quick, but you do, like, if you watch, you do a takedown.
Yeah, so it's really it's just moments like that. And yeah, I think the most difficult to shoot definitely might have been this season 4 battle in the absolute scorching sun, because it was just physically very demanding, and I wonder what's it going to be like this year, Yeah. With all the new regulations.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. One thing
6 feet apart when you're fighting, though,
Yes.
I wonder.
Only bows and arrows and axe throws in season 5.
It'd be interesting too. Like, I'd like to learn a bow and arrow thing.
Spears.
Spears too.
Mark would love spears. Mark is like, when are we bringing spears? He's always about spears. He researches his stuff a lot.
Really?
There were spears in Dunholm. There were spears in Dunholm. I remember the battle in season 2.
Throughout, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of spears throughout. It's like,
he's the one, like, if there's a spear, Mark's gonna go for it, because he's like, we need to use these because it's historically accurate, and he loves his research. He's a very, very thought out researcher when it comes to that.
Interesting. So, gotta ask you about what was it like to hang upside down, and how long were you actually hanging upside down? If you could just talk about that whole.
It wasn't. I think it was like a minute or a couple minutes. Is the thing that the only thing is that you have to practice before it.
Oh, really?
Like every day, just just stand upside down, stand on your head for a little bit, just to get acquainted with it. Because we shot that scene for 2 days. So the first day was pretty difficult because you're not, but the second day you're sort of used to it by then. So it's not, we follow, I think, we definitely followed health and all the regulations, but it's quite demanding because you can't swallow when you're upside down. So if you want to swallow, it's sort of like, it kind of hurts. So there were a couple of things that you had to adapt to, but in general, it was fun. It was just, while hanging there, it's just moments like that when you really appreciate your work or your job. It's like, what the fuck are we doing, man? We're hanging upside down. We're hanging upside down a tree. There's like, 5, 6 of us. We're hanging upside down the tree. And so that's, it's just, you really appreciate that the life that you've been given, but also it's like, what the fuck?
That'd be good. That'd be a good prank to pull on maybe like a new cast member. Is we're gonna do another hanging scene. Yeah, but just never shoot any of it though. Just
cut the scene.
Yeah,
you better practice every day.
Practice
But,
every day.
Yeah. That could be because we like pranking each other. That would have to involve a lot of departments, and I don't think other departments have as much time. But I definitely like to involve myself in a prank like that. Yeah.
Speaking of that scene, though, I felt like they were really. I'm glad you didn't get killed off this season, but I really felt like they were foreshadowing Sihtric was going to get it this season, because in the battle at Tetton Hall, Sihtric falls, Finan yells, Sihtric, and I was scared that whole battle. I was like, where's Sihtric? Every time I was looking, make sure he wasn't. Is he okay? And then the quarantine episode, he was the only one that like didn't care at all about the sickness, And then the hanging upside down, I was like, I feel like they are just foreshadowing he's gonna get it this last episode. I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah, me too.
But was that like an idea they were playing with, or?
I haven't heard about that idea, but maybe they were. But I'm not. It kind of makes. It's interesting that you say that, because I think it's difficult to. When you watch a show and you relate to your characters, you think essentially that they're never going to die, probably, unless there's stuff like that, which then makes them more real, that there's always an opportunity that they might get killed. Because as, let's say, heroes, usually guys just come in, slay everyone, and done. That's it. So we like to ask for that as well with stunt guys, like make it more difficult, make it difficult for us, because that way, only that way, I think you can tell a story that, yeah, these are very strong guys, very powerful, but they're still just guys. They could still just die. So I like all those trips and falls, and maybe personally as actors, we push the possibility of death a bit further, just to be surprised, just to surprise yourself, in case maybe you will die, maybe there will be maybe that is a foreshadowing for some sort of a death, or maybe it's not.
Interesting.
So I think it's there's something in that, the stakes, having the stakes that we're knowing that they can die. I think it's very important.
And you guys have been around a long time. Like when Halleck died, that was a real emotional scene on the front of the slave boat. But we were only introduced him at the end of season 1, and then, partway through season 2, he was already killed off. But you've been around since season 2. So like if one of you guys gets it, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough.
I think we're all afraid that one of the core Uhtred we did lose Biaka early, and I consider him in that group. But
Definitely.
But yeah, I think like going later in the season, I was expecting like one of like Finan, Sihtric, or Osferth to like get it just for like the emotional value, and I'm glad nobody did, so we can get them all back for season 5.
Yeah, but when you're on a show like this, and not like this, but in general, a period drama or a action-packed show, I think it's a healthy approach as an actor to come in like, well, I might die this season. Every season you approach as if it's your last. I mean, I think I don't know if it shows, but I think we now have a certain work ethic that every day we approach as if it's the last day on set ever. And I believe that we share that mentality, maybe even if it's unwritten, unspoken, but I think that's how much we love our job. So every day fuck it, I might die. As a character or as a human, this is the day that this is the one and only day I'm on set. So yeah, we try to approach it that way. Yeah.
Good way to do it.
Yeah. Now, we had Molly Rowe on the podcast as well, and she does a really fantastic job with all the costumes and everything. And she talked about some actors really like to put input into their costumes. Did you have any input into your own costume?
So since Molly came, because she joined us, I think
season 3, I think. Yeah.
So my initial costume, like the base of my costume, was created before. So the only adjustment that I made is my knife, my dagger, was initially in front.
Okay.
I asked them like, oh, could you put it in my back? Could you put it in the back? So that I could be like now it's like functionally a bit more difficult, and I had to practice a lot. If I ever put it in, like I practiced the entire day so that it would seem like seamless, just put it in there. But that's the only thing I moved. I think I didn't do many adjustments to it because I just like what Molly does is great. I get to choose like the rings that I have.
Okay.
Like we work on that a little bit. We adjust the where we put this or where we put that, but in terms of what she brings in, it just lands.
Are any of those accessories that you choose, are there any specific meanings to them or anything like that?
Well, the reason for me putting the knife in the back was that I could keep it a secret in case it's the last draw, and it also looks cool.
Oh, it looks cool. That's the only reason you need.
But apart from that, I like he has a wedding ring. We shot like a little scene to it when we were giving away our rings in episode 3 or 4 when Finnan says like, go back to the town, sell all this because we're like, we don't have money anymore. So there's like, I tried to play around with the preciousness of, because he's married and he loves his wife. He never gets to see her, but so there's that one thing that he taps into, and obviously his Thor's hammer, because he's had it all of his life. And I guess that's, now that we talk about it, I guess that's the only relic from past life.
Yeah, interesting. And he holds on to it a lot in times of trouble and stuff. And cool.
Sort of like getting the energy of death and rage for battles, because I think it's also used for different reasons. Because when Finnan prays, it feels like protect us. Where this is, let's go.
Let's go. This is it, baby.
It's Thor's hammer, man.
Yeah.
So one other thing about your costume I want to ask you about is your tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a serpent or what is it exactly?
It's a serpent.
It is a serpent. Okay.
It is a serpent.
Okay, cool.
Never really thought about its meaning per se.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's common, Dane symbology with the serpent, and
Yeah, but also now that if we'd go down like and decipher it, I never thought about it before like this, but now like, there's always snakes in the grass. There's always snakes in the grass, and look for them. So I wonder, because there's a lot of serpenty beings in the show, and even his father could be like, hey, he's your blood, but also bad person, snake. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Reminders of something.
That's very cool. Are there any things that you need to do to kind of get into the headspace of Sihtric, like before you shoot a scene or getting ready for the day?
To keep, because our job requires a lot of focus in a very short period of time. So you're not focused, not like you don't need it, and then you just like 10 to 20 seconds for the take. So what helps me, I guess, is just breathing a little bit. I try to, because again, my mind is all over the place. So I don't know. You just look at the other person. You ask yourself, like, what does this person mean to me? Who's Uhtred to me, or who's that person? So it's never. I don't know. I don't think that I'm yet on it per se, but what helps me in acting is just focusing on others, rather than on yourself. And the stories of others remind my stories, and because it's all of your life is relationships with other people, and all those relationships are in your head. So what are you going to think about yourself, or are you going to think about others, and what do they mean to you, and or if they make you feel angry or whatever? So that is something. And I guess I like thinking about the family a lot. Think about his son and his wife, that he doesn't, because I think that's one of his purposes in life, to just build that, to purpose. That's a good one, purpose. to develop a family that he's never had. So I like to keep that in the back of the back of my head, that even when go into battle, you're like, oh, I'm gonna die, but also you try to think of your family because they're really important to him. Yeah. Even though he doesn't get to see him a lot, but it's it's something he's never had, and he mindfully works on hopefully creating it. Mm-hmm. So the core value of family.
One thing that Steve and I really love about The Last Kingdom is how we talk about this with some other guests as well. There seems to be all this kind of mythical things going on, yet there's always a rational explanation for them, for the time period. And it seems like that the show always does try to stick to like make it feel real. But I like to ask, especially a character like yours who really believes in the mythical side of it, like the curse and things like that. Like, how do you, as the actor, kind of interpret the show in that regard?
Well, I think that we as characters, some less than others, we truly have the faith in what we stand for, the deities that we believe in. We truly do. And I think that the logical explanations that unravel themselves later in the show, mm-hmm. they do not take away from the intrinsic faith that they have. So even though there's a logic explanation to something, in Sihtric's mind, Skade was a curse.
Absolutely.
And when she was killed, all of a sudden things are getting better. How's that not a curse? I think signs and experiences of signs per se are very personal, and they're not empirical, and you can't explain them to others. Even if you talk in real life, when you talk to scientific minded people, and I don't think that you have to be one or the other, you could be both, but I think when you talk to them, everything needs to be proven. I need to have some variables, x plus y equals this, and you solve it. When it comes to, let's say, divine experiences, it's very personal. You can't, if I think something is a sign and I have a reoccurring theme of that sign, if I tell it to someone else, they're not gonna, they don't know it. It's, to them, it's just coincidental in a way. So I like to think that whatever happens, even though there's logical explanations in the heads of the characters, it's still fate. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I just like to get different, takes on that, because it's such a, whoever watched the show could kind of interpret that aspect of the show different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's also the fact that, yes, there's also another point interesting to, I think it was in season 2, the guy that was buried. I can't remember the name of the character.
Bjorn.
Bjorn kept on coming from the ground, right?
Yeah.
So it also shows a side that humans manipulate. So there's someone who's going to try and manipulate and pretend to be that. Then does it still take away from the possibility of this or that being real? If there's someone trying to manipulate, does it then completely negate the existence? So I like what I like about the show, that it's always in the air, that is it this, or is it real? Is it logical, or is it just something spiritual?
Interesting. Because
it's never really, there's always an explanation, but we're still throwing stones and trying to read runes,
Yeah.
So it's those, I feel like those coexist at the same time. And I like that about this show.
I love that. And I love that the show doesn't just come out and say this is a mythical show or this is a historically accurate show. It leaves it up for interpretation, which is a super cool thing.
I love how they balance it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate when a good TV or drama or whatever drama, I appreciate when it keeps the audience working.
Yeah. Because
you just have everything solved. This is that. It's good. It's fun. But as a member of an audience, I like to feel that I figured something out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Absolutely.
So if it's something unspoken, untold in the show, and you think one or the other, it's up to you.
Yeah. And Steve and I would have countless discussions about it, after we'd watch episodes in grad school and stuff.
And do you fight? Like, do you have like one?
We make the square. We do.
We make the square.
We make the square.
We make a square.
But then it just turns into like a tickle fight or something. We don't kill each other.
Oh my god, that's good. What do you like? What's your biggest takeaway from this show? Like, what makes you like it?
Oh, so many things. I was actually just thinking, this is kind of a new thought, and we've had so many podcasts to talk about the show. I was just thinking about this and like our kind of the climate that we live in today, the like political and social climate of like polarization.
Yeah.
This show is like a great reminder that like, look at Uhtred's group. You have 3 or 4 individuals who have totally different beliefs, totally different backgrounds, and they love each other, and they find so much to agree on at the same time. I'm just kind of thinking about that right now. That's kind of a pretty cool thing that we don't really see a lot nowadays, at least in the media.
And another thing too with that is how they portray both sides. There's the Dane side, which when at first you're like, oh, that's the Viking, that's the rock stars, man. But then they're also raiding towns and killing people and raping and it's like they're not that great. But then you see the Saxons, and they sometimes have that hypocrisy. They're willing to torture and maim, but we've got the superior morals. So, and I don't mean that in any religious or anti-religious way. I just mean I think it's a good way to show our world, and then there's nuance to things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you picked up on that, because that's one of the discussions that we have on set every now and again, is that there's this polarization, and like there's this evident duality between the characters, neither this or nor that. Yeah. But here we are, like the Father Bjorka and Thura marriage was right? Like, this is a hardcore Christian, she's an absolute pagan. They're fine. They're fine. They can be together.
They're
love
fine. Each other. Mm-hmm. They still argue about, don't give your blood. That's, heathen, but they still love each other at the end of the day.
It's the personality traits is what makes that relationship. It's not the teams that they identify with.
But the other thing about the show is there's so many characters too that you just fall in love with. And I just feel like every actor on the show is able to step it up, is able to kind of, do what they do.
Yeah, even if they have just a brief moment. There's some episodes where it feels like we might just meet someone that episode and they're done. Yeah. And then we're like, that was the best fucking version that they could have done with that person. Like, remember the priest at the beginning of was it season 2 when the Danes, was it Efferwich, Colby?
Yeah, the one that started the rebellion.
Yeah, he started the rebellion.
Yeah, I think of him. I think of Cheowolf when they're doing the wedding thing. That guy too.
The casting in this, the casting directors are unbelievable. Everyone that comes in, there's just some sort of like Chicago Bullsian mentality to playing as I mentioned, playing every game like it's we got to prove something. I
just finished watching The Last Dance, so it's ringing true.
So I totally agree with you that every actor that comes in brings in so much, like, just tiny detail, and you're like, that's the most important person. That's the most important character for right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I really appreciate to be part of a team of actors that are so devoted. Every single one, and it's no one's slacking off ever. Everyone's always there. If you're behind the camera, people stay. It's a huge team effort, and it really feels like a team.
Absolutely. And we try, that's what we've been trying to get people on the podcast from behind the camera too, because they deserve a ton of credit as well. And the scope of their job is unbelievable. The amount of things to talk about with them too. But because you made the analogy real quick, who's the Dennis Rodman of the cast?
Take one of the rebounds. Let's see. Not colorful. I'd say Osfrith.
Okay.
Say Osfrith is actually Dennis Rodman. Less flamboyant, but the mystery. It takes a lot of rebounds. Takes all the rebounds. Always comes in like use him as a bait. We use him as a bait. He's always like doesn't seem like he's scoring points, but he's
I love the sequence when he walks up to those when you guys are going to get Skade.
Yeah.
And you guys sneak. Yeah, you do the little clink with this axe and sword with Finn in, and he just walks up and taunts him a little bit.
That's that entire scene. He sort of like created it. Like he added lines to it. Then we played around, offset. We're like, let's just make a bit of a comedy out of this. It has to be a bit like stupid. Yeah. So that entire sequence of him coming in was, we all felt like really part of it because we sort of managed to give a bit of birth to it as well together. So yeah, Dennis Rodman though, I don't know.
Who's your favorite person to do scenes with, or who do you wish that you don't have a lot of scenes with, you could have more with?
I really appreciate any scene that you can do one-on-one. It's nice to when we're together as a team, it's fun. But it's also nice to sometimes step out and do it with the other characters. I really wish that I had had more time with Father Bialka. I feel like there was moments that, even though after he married Thura, it was different, that he had a bit of a more liking to us pagans in the sense of the show. But I really appreciated that we managed to have like some sort of a closeness, even though I even noticed, I don't know if like it's ever audible, but if he's ever there, I would still say father. Sihtric would still say father, even though he's like, I don't even believe in that religion, let's say Sihtric, but he would still refer him to as,
because there's the respect you have for him.
Yeah, because he's this bald priest. Supposedly he's just a priest, but he comes in and slays.
He slays
and loses.
He punches Tiedemann, and you're like.
And we're like, oh, this guy. And it's like seeing like someone who's like your uncle, you shouldn't be cool. Yeah, brings out that Metallica t-shirt and like, there you go.
So I wanted to ask you about a couple scenes with him, actually. And the first one is when you're holding him back with the fire. Yeah. And then also the other really emotional one is when he dies at Bebember. Could you speak maybe to those scenes where you kind of catch him there too?
Yeah, now that you say it, I did have in both of them. I had his head in my arms.
Yeah, it looked like he was tough to hold back at that fire.
He was. We actually, it was. Because the house was burning. We only had so many takes we can do. So it was very rushed, and he's a force of nature, and it was obviously it's very real. We don't like practice much, but we just like go for it, and then you have to hold the person back. I felt the strong, like those moments like that was like the strongest connection with him, because I think our characters are they're not necessarily empaths per se, but when it comes to someone that they're close to, this level of empathy really grows. And the moment of the house burning, because of him being the way he is in that moment, his pain transfers to you. Like I felt like his pain transferred to Sihtric, and in that moment, I'm not sure if that's what I thought, but I felt like this could be my family.
Yeah,
this could be my family.
Wow.
And I think the empathy of it is then it just takes over. And in this scene of his death, because we're just bonding, we're at that level. We're like, the first 3 episodes of season 4, he's single now. He has nothing to lose, and now he's part of our team. We're on a ship. We're on a boat, making fun, laughing from young Uhtred, making jokes about that. So we're now bonding to a next degree. We're all now castaways. He doesn't have a family. I can't see mine. We don't have a home. So we're just the band of like rebels who have nothing to lose. And we're here. That's all we have. It's just us. And when he dies, I think with the moment of catching him, what I felt and thought of as Sihtric or myself is that this man just gave himself away. He put himself in front of an arrow to protect another man's legacy, which he will not build himself anymore. He will not have that legacy. So to see him drop in your hands, and I guess in that moment the pain of all of Team Uhtred fell into your own heart. So you're sad for you feel pain because you lose this man from your life, but you also feel that Uhtred's pain. Yeah. Like every single not cast members, but like characters' pain, and it just falls into your heart in that moment. And yeah, it was tough.
Well, what is it like as like also a cast member and a fellow actor losing him, Ian Hart, who's been such a core of the show too? Yeah, was there something to that?
There's definitely a lot to that. I think everyone on set, that was his last day on set as well.
It's gotta be emotional.
It was very emotional. Every single one of us, I don't know if I can tell it. I think every single one of us had like a very vulnerable moment of tears, because it's when we said goodbye, because he's just leaving now. He's not going to be with us, and he's been such a core member of just spending time with him, learning learning from Ian in terms of how easy he makes it look. I think everything good in life must look effortless. It might have a lot of effort inside, but from the outside, it looks effortless. So everything he'd done was always so effortless, and to lose that, and his sense of comedy, and I've learned a lot about history with him because he's very into that. Mm-hmm. And to just lose that member and not having any more, it's different. It's weird. As well as you mentioned, we're such a family. By season 4, you've spent so much time together, and every year that bond, it never weakens. It just grows stronger. Mm-hmm. So to say goodbye to someone like that,
wow,
like,
yeah, absolutely, wow. Yeah. So we're getting close to the end here. We just want to ask a few more questions about anything in the future that we can expect from you as an actor. I mean, I know season 5 will be coming up. Is there anything else?
Well, I'm currently, actor's life is always, the life of an actor is always waiting, hearing no's or not hearing them. So obviously, because of the season, there are a couple of things that you just can't do because you're locked into this. But you'll definitely be seeing me a lot more, especially in your home country. Definitely.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because that's always been my dream, and that's always I've been working on, and that's something that I always knew that I'm going to be doing in the future. So
going off that, what are some of your bigger goals?
It's a funny thing to say, but I really love westerns. I love.
Oh yeah.
One day I'd love to do a western. Oh.
What's your favorite one? Or favorite couple?
Well, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Definitely.
Favorite 10.
Yeah, good, the bad, and the ugly are definitely them. Fistful of Dollars. Then I can't remember which one was with Charles Bronson, the Sergio Leone one. Because I know that Charles Bronson initially he's of Lithuanian descent, which really? I only recently found out. I know that Sergio Leone would buy Clint Eastwood because he couldn't afford Charles Bronson up until, what was it, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Yeah.
Perhaps. So I like those. Obviously, mainly Sergio Leone. Sergio Leone stuff is something that I spend a lot of time watching. Yeah, 60s, 70s spaghetti westerns.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Something I want to do.
Yeah, you could be the new Doc Holliday or something. I don't know. That'd be sweet.
One day, definitely that. And I'd like to explore more drama. It's nice to do something, so action-packed, and then something even further vulnerable. Just to keep yourself...
Mix it up
a little bit.
Variety is the spice of life. So, absolutely.
And hot sauce.
Yeah.
Hot sauce. Oh, yeah. Hot sauce. What kind of hot sauce? Hot sauce.
Oh, I
not a
try and
big
get
guy.
different ones all the time. Honestly, I try, and I remember my room, Colby. I had like all the bottles of the different types I had sitting
Yeah,
on
you
my
did.
windows.
Yeah, you did.
My girlfriend hated that.
Did it have a smell, Kobe? Did it like a?
No, I
when you-
cleaned it out.
I don't want to mention what Steve's room. No, I'm just kidding. Steve's room smelled fine. It smelled
Fine.
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 No,
Oh.
but yeah. But yeah, so we also ask our guests any other shows you've been watching recently or movies that you'd recommend or that you've really liked.
Speaking of older movies, I'm a big fan of like the 70s, 80s cinema. So I've just this weekend I just rewatched The Great Escape.
Okay.
With Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, and a lot of amazing actors. So I like that. Recently rewatched again Bullet with Steve with the, you know that one with one of the most famous car chase scenes in the entire history of car chase scenes.
I don't think I've seen it. But...
I've only seen it once, but he's great in whatever he's in.
But
you need to.
That I recently rewatched. Finished Ozark. I don't watch a lot of shows.
So good.
Honest, but I just binged that. I spent a week.
Ozark is
I came to London and I just spent a week watching that. And I'm like,
so good. So you finished it. You saw that the performance of the brother in the last season. I forget his name. The wife's brother.
Oh my God.
I cried.
Oh my God.
Ripped my heart out. My heart out.
Yeah, his performance was because you sort of like hate him, but then he comes in and you're like, oh my God, there's so many levels to this guy.
So many layers, and you can't even understand him. He's just, his life is just amazing. He did a great job. Looks like we're pretty much out of time. We just want to say thank you, Arnas, for joining us. Really enjoyed this talk with you, and we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Great talk. Yeah. Thanks for coming on with us. And people... We'll link your IMDb and all that down below too in the description.
Twitter and Instagram and stuff. So check out Arnas for sure.
Absolutely. Make sure to check out his podcast too from The Last Kingdom.
I really thank you for having me because I didn't like I knew from because I just had James Northcote over before we went into here, and he had his experience. Everyone that had something to do with you guys had just amazing experiences. And it wasn't just like it doesn't feel like just an interview, but it's a journey of questioning because you pick up on like very specific, beautiful little details that become themes. So I appreciate you being so thorough and asking such powerful questions that make you wonder and consider yourself a little bit more.
Awesome.
So
Well, that's why we wanted to. That's why we wanted to do this.
Yeah, we just want to get in the nitty gritty, and
So this is awesome.
So,
thank you so much. I mean,
thank you.
Amazing.
So please, so everyone, please check us out too. Subscribe to the Screen Chronicles, and we'll have more to come. And for now, goodbye from Arnas Fedaravičius and the Screen Chronicles.
Thank you, guys.